Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is probably going to be, not an elaborate fish jumping slow motion video. No baits underwater. Um, Probably won't get that many views because that's kind of what people like to see. We're just going to dive down into the bare bones of how to catch more fish in the summertime, where you need to start concentrating. Before you even get to the water. My ultimate goal here is just to make you a better fisherman and eliminate all that dead water for you before you even get there. You're going to be able to eliminate 90% of the water because 90% of the fish are only in 10% of the lake, if that makes any sense. So we're going to eliminate all that dead water. You're going to be able to do that before you actually ever cast a bait, before you even get there. So the ultimate goal here is to start catching fish immediately. And not only are there going to be numbers there, but there's going to be bigger fish. So you're going to have some of the biggest fish in the lake hanging around these spots. But yeah, that's it. So if you're interested in that and you're interested in more videos like this, I'm going to start pumping more out on how to actually catch these fish in these different conditions, different times of the year, different patterns the fish are in. We're just going to dive right down into it. Subscribe to the channel because there's going to be a whole lot more to come after this. Ultimate goal is to make you a better fisherman. And if you have kids, this is definitely something that you want to watch if you plan on taking your kids fishing. You want to learn as much as you can. Because with kids, it's a different story. You're going to have to put them right on the fish immediately so they can experience and just get hooked on that adrenaline rush of that fish hitting their rod and them catching their first fish. There's really nothing like it. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, so the first thing I would recommend, it's always good to have a paper map of the lake or body of water that you're getting ready to fish before you go out there, because you can just lay it out right in front of you. And I want to teach you how to eliminate all this dead water just from that map right there. It's got to be a map with contour lines. And if you don't have access to that, you can just Google the lake that you're fishing. So in this video, we're going to be looking at Nolan Lake in Kentucky. And it's a flood control lake. So they pull it down like 20, 25 feet in the wintertime. And they'll start holding it, I think in March, to let it fill back up for the summer. But they do that to control flooding down below the dam. This technique is going to work on like 90% of the lakes. So I wouldn't worry about that. But we just so happen, and we're going to pull up a map of Nolan Lake. And if you don't have a paper map, you can Google like the name of your lake, space Navionics. And the Navionics.com has a list of pretty much every lake out there in the United States, where if you click on it, it's going to blow it up, and it's going to have all these contour lines that I'm getting ready to show you. It's going to look like this right here. So this is an example of what an actual lake looks like. So the contour lines, the closer they are, the blackness that you see, all these lines getting really close together, that's the steeper the drop. And the more spread out they are, they actually have, the depth number marking what each line is and how deep the water is right there. And that's a big deal. You got to learn how to read a map. This is actually what it looks like on Navionics.com. So we have Nolan Lake here in Kentucky, and the main channel, this is the river before they flooded the lake. It is highlighted in like red dotted lines. It's highlighted in red dotted lines. So the main areas that you want to concentrate on in the summertime, this is going to work through June, July, and most of August, before the fish start transitioning in, their summer to fall transition. These are the areas that you want to look at June, July, and August here in the Midwest. And anywhere you see the channel sweeping up next to a point or a flat, I'm looking for something like this. I'm looking for a flat where the channel sweeps right up next to it. And your sweet spot is going to be right there next to the main channel. If you have a fish finder and a GPS, that's ideal because you can pull up a split screen, zoom in on your GPS right there where that channel is, and that big flat is coming out in the middle of the lake. And these fish could be anywhere between 20 feet deep to 12 foot deep. But your fish finder is actually going to tell you where they're at. The very first thing I do, I pull up this map here, and then I mark my spots, my high percentage areas. And when I go out there, I'm just going to go over it back and forth with my graph. I have a side finder. So actually you could just, if you have one of those, you could just go straight in from the point all the way to the bank, to the tip of the point where it's most shallow. And you can find that spot on a spot. Typically when you're scanning the spot that you're marked on these flats, there's going to be a sweet spot. And it might be a little hole down there. It could be a log. It could be a stump. It could be a stump next to a rock pile. It could be a rock pile. You could have all three of those together right next to the channel where it drops from like 20 feet down to like 35 feet. Or you could have these little shelves starting in like 12 to 14 feet of water that might drop 6 inches or a foot or 2 feet. And, there's a stump and like a rock pile right there. But your fish finder is gonna reveal that. And you might accidentally go over top of it while you're fishing. And then you see all them fish down there hanging around that cover and that different type of structure there on that break. Well, you would just pull off and start casting to that spot. How I approach this, once I have my spots marked before I get out there, I'm heading to the point, and I'm gonna find where the channel is. I'm gonna creep up to the channel, and then I'm gonna start going up on the flat, and I'm going to start looking at my fish finder to see what depth range those fish are in. If you see fish starting to show up in like 14 feet and you're sitting in 20 feet, but you don't see anything below it, then those fish are going to be orientating themselves on the bottom 12 to 14 foot deep. You can almost guarantee that. So you could actually go all the way up to 12, 14 feet of water when you start seeing those fish, and then you'll start seeing them on the bottom. That's the fish that you want to fish for. I don't fish for suspended fish. I'm no good. Maybe some of you guys are, but I'm not. I just let them tell me which depth I need to target on the bottom. Because you better believe they're going to be eating up on some crawfish down there. And shad. Shad's their primary food source, but I believe they like crawfish way better than shad. Once you find that depth range, and you figure out where it's at in position to the channel, you might have to pull out and sit in like 20 feet of water. And you just kind of want to just keep your kayak in 20 feet of water and just work around that flat. And keeping it in 20 feet of water so that you can fish from 10 to 16 to 17 feet of water, right? You can fish through that sweet spot. So you got to keep your kayak out away from that spot and make sure you stay in that 22 foot range with your kayak. and you're able to get up there and cast to about 12 foot deep. I like casting up past where the fish are and working through it. Once you figure that out and you're catching fish, you can pull up another part of the lake, follow those red dotted lines on navyonyx.com up next to these flats and circle those or mark them with your GPS and do the same thing. You can replicate this across the entire lake, keeping in mind where you found them on that first flat, the depth range, what you were catching them on, and the depth that you had to keep your kayak in. So you can do this June, July, and like the first part of August, and you're golden. I guarantee you will put more fish in the boat. You will catch bigger fish, and you'll have a much better time out there on the water. It's going to be more fun. You're going to be catching more. More than likely, you're going to be catching as soon as you make your first cast. As soon as you find those fish on that flat, more than likely, you're going to pull up to the first spot that you mark if you do this, and you're going to start catching fish right off the bat. I got all these little circles, and you're going to see the yellow highlighter. Those are going to be the sweet spot areas that you want to concentrate on because those are the closest to the channel. You know, whether you're in a boat or a kayak, if you're in a kayak, you know, you want to launch at the closest place. So you want to pick an area that's maybe close to your launch, and then you can just dissect it just like this. Pick these high percentage spots like I have marked right here on this map, and just go out there, graph it, see what depth range the fish are in. Keep your kayak out away from that a little bit. You know, like I said again, if the fish are in 12 to 14 feet of water, you want to pull out to about 20 feet of water depending on the slope of the bank. And you can mark the slope of the bank too on how far it is away from that sweet spot, like 14 foot deep. And you don't want to mark where the fish are. You want to mark where you need to stay. You want to make that mark on your graph where your boat needs to be positioned. And if you find a sweet spot, I usually mark it, and then I'll pull off, and then I'll mark that spot. So I know where it's at. You actually pick something on the bank to stay lined up with, like right on front of the point, and also to the side of you, so you kind of know where to be. So you not only have your GPS mark, you have a visual mark here and here, and that's good too if you don't have GPS. If you get your visual markers that can like line you up, so you can stay right there in that sweet spot, and you kind of cast to the thing on the bank that you positioned yourself, so that you can catch those fish. Not only flats close to channel, but also if you can find any rock walls that are close to that flat, or maybe a cove where the channel sweeps in front of the cove and that cove has some depth to it, and you can find some chunk rock, like big old boulders down in there, and like 8 to 12 feet of water, you know, the size of cars, right? Because these lakes in Kentucky, they got a bunch of those. And even some chunk rock, or a transitional bank where you got mud and rock or pea gravel coming together. And it's got a few good drops down in there. I mean, you know right off the bat if it's holding fish, because, you know, you're going to go in there and you're going to use your electronics, and you're going to graph that area, and you're going to see the depth range that those fish are in. Because sometimes you can find some big fish laying on rocks up in cuts. Not only in cuts, but the rock wall leading up to the flat where the channel swings up next to the bank. And you got this gradual slope. It's probably 4 or 5 foot drop right on the bank on that wall. I'm just kind of throwing something out there. And then it gradually drops down to like 9, 10, 12, 14 foot deep before you get that big drop into the channel, 20, 30 foot deep. And there might be some chunk rock and some wood and some stumps up there, or some laydowns. And that could be the sweet spot also leading up to the flat next to the channel. So you never know where you're going to find that giant bass. If you follow that, I guarantee you're going to catch more fish. But the baits that I use, you guys already know what I throw. I will go out there. You got to stay prepared, because sometimes they'll come up in the jumps, normally early in the morning, and you want a topwater stick bait, like a Zara spook, a jerk bait, suspending jerk bait. I have those on no matter what, any condition, because you never know when those fish are gonna push these shad up to the surface and start busting right on top of that flat. And there could be some big old bass doing that. Caught some big fish doing that. So always got your jerk bait, your shallow suspending jerk bait tied on, and your topwater bait. I prefer like a Zara spook. I don't want to chuck a crankbait all day. But you can throw like a 6XD or something, it has to constantly stay in contact with the bottom, because you want it deflecting off of all those rocks and stumps down there. So you can throw a crankbait. You can actually jig a spoon if you want to. I've done that before. I miss a whole lot on it just because of that single treble hook. They like to throw it. Number one bait to throw in the summertime, fishing this technique right here, is a football jig. Immediately, like 5:30 in the morning, if those fish are in like 14 feet of water, and I'm going to pull out to 20 feet, and I'm going to start chucking my football jig. And as you can see right here, my dad and I, we were just tearing them up. Let me know what you guys think, and definitely, if this is working for you, leave me a comment. More stuff to come. If you have any questions or anything, I read through my comments. I'll be glad to answer. Maybe I'll see you out there on the water. Who knows? But until then, thanks for watching, and tight lines. I know I crossed you. You can.
All right, I'm done.
You can keep doing that. Yeah.
Just to get bit. Trying to figure out where they hanging. A little battery chunky.
Yeah.
Definitely 15, ain't it?
Yeah.